The rise of filmmakers like Ghatak, Sen, and Ray post-independence marked India's first wave of indigenous yet transnational cinema. Their work, deeply rooted in socio-political realities of a new independent nation, diverged sharply from mainstream Bollywood narratives that dominated Indian cinema. While Bollywood films like Mother India projected a unified, aspirational vision of the nation, one that reinforced idealized nationalism and state building, these Bengali filmmakers embraced a more critical, sometimes unsettling engagement with post-colonial identity, class struggle, and cultural alienation. Their films refused to romanticize India's independence, instead confronting the disillusionment, fragmentation, and ideological turmoil that followed. All three, Ghatak, Sen, and Ray, had a different artistic take on this common theme of post-colonial cultural identity and employed different, sometimes overlapping, methods of filmmaking. Consequently, the message of these films, or sometimes lack of it, got heavily influenced by these directorial decisions. Despite their differences, all three directors contributed to a redefinition of Indian cinema, proving that the nation's identity was not a singular but deeply contested. Their films functioned both as a national and transnational texts, firmly rooted in Bengal's culture and political landscape, yet engaging with global cinematic traditions and ideologies. Together, they offered a counterpoint to Bollywood's nationalist filmmaking, providing instead a cinema of critique, resistance, and introspection, one that continues to frame India's film discourse today. Ritvik Ghatak's Read and Debate and a Story, in Bengali Jukti Takku Ar Goppo, is not only a deeply personal work but also a cinematic articulation of Bengal's fragmented identity. This film serves as Ghatak's posthumous autobiographical account, employing extreme symbolism to navigate themes of political betrayal, cultural identity, and generational despair.
আমার দেশের মুখ আমার গাছের বটে তুই দেশের কি রে আচ্ছা তোর দেশের মোহ
The film's use of symbolic moments such as My Country's Liquor scene pays homage to an earlier Scotch drinking friend, subtly contrasting the imperial past with a self-sustained national identity. Similarly, the scene where Neelkanth receives money from an old friend but only takes one note, specifically only what's needed, represents a clear ideological contrast between capitalism, which thrives on excess, and communist ideals, which emphasizes necessity.
चाहे ना तुम्हारे चाहे ना जी आपन मायरे नहीं जाने तेरा তোমায় কিছু দেবে না মিথ্যা কহে শুধু কত কি ভাবে কেন চেয়ে আছো মা আছে তোমারি স্বর্ণ শোষতব জাহ্নবী বাড়ি তুমি তো দিতেছ মা যায় আছে তোমারি স্বর্ণ শোষতব জাহ্নবী বাড়ি জ্ঞান ধর্ম কত পূর্ণ কাহিনী এরা কি দেবে তোর কিছু না মিথ্যা পাবে শুধু এলো পরাণে কেন চেয়ে আছো গো মা
Ghatak, like Federico Fellini, utilizes extreme symbolism to communicate cultural and mythological themes. Bongo Bala, for instance, embodies the spirit of Bangladesh, crying and defeated, mirroring the nation's recent post-partition trauma. This thematic depth sets Ghatak apart from his contemporaries like Satyajit Ray and Mrinal Sen, who lean towards a more secular narrative approach. His engagement with mythology and religious imagery, particularly through figures like Durga and Bongowala, reflects a distinctly Ghatakian method of exploring Bengal's cultural identity, which is quite absent in Ray's and Sen's work. Ghatak's use of an open-ended narrative aligns with art house cinema, reinforcing its nationalistic, transnational themes. The film also adopts Soviet montage techniques, incorporating document-style sequences like chow dance to enhance its ideological resonance. Ghatak frequently spliced in documentary material, a stylistic choice that reinforces the film's nationalistic outlook and connects it with second cinema's political consciousness.
এত মদ খান কেন? খাই, যুক্তি নেই। মানে আপনাদের মতো লোক যদি মানে সত্যি আপনাদের বোঝা উচিত, মানে আপনারা যদি আমরা আমাদের জেনারেশনটা হয় আমরা চোর নয় বিভ্রান্ত আর নাইলে কাপুরুষ হয়ে পালিয়ে যাওয়ার মিছিল, খাঁটি কোনো ব্যাটা না, এক সালাম নাই। এই তোমরা এই ছেলে মেয়ের দল, তোমরা হচ্ছে ক্রিম অফ বেঙ্গল, আমাদের সম্পূর্ণ পুঁজি। তাই যদি ভাবেন তাহলে
The general divide is another critical theme, with Neelkanth embodying a generation that has lost hope, placing its fate on the youth. His conversations with the Naxalite, where he tells them, "You are our capital," highlights his belief in the younger generation as the torchbearers of revolution. This sentiment reflects Ghatak's own disillusionment and hope, shaped by the turbulence of his time. The non-cooperation movement, partition, subsequent riots, and the Bengal famine. Ghatak's ambiguous stance on ideology remains a contentious point. While he claims to depict the political backdrop of Bengal from 1971 to 1972 without adhering to an ideology, his ties to the Indian People's Theatre Association, which was the cultural wing of the Communist Party of India, suggests otherwise. He insists that there is no ideology. I saw it from a point of view of a politician. I'm not supposed to please a political ideology. However, this comes across as contradictory, considering his direct engagement with leftist cultural movements. Perhaps rather than being ideological, he was deeply grieved by the political turmoil surrounding him. Ghatak's reasoned debate on his story is a nationalistic work with transnational undertones, particularly in his treatments of Bangladesh and Bengal as a singular cultural identity. His cinema attempts a reconceptualization of naturalized senses of home, driven by a pervasive sense of loss and exile. His identity remains fluid, flirting between national and transnational consciousness. To Ghatak, it is a national film, and to the average viewer, it transcends borders, embodying a broader transnational identity. Mrinal Sen's interview is a scathing critique of capitalism, modernity, and the lingering imprints of colonialism in Bengal. Through the protagonist's desperate search for a suit, Sen weaves an intricate commentary on cultural alienation, class struggle, and the commodification of labor. This film is deeply political, demanding active audience engagement through its stylistic choices and overt fourth wall breaks. The film's opening in the barber shop immediately establishes the idea of conformity. Every haircut looks distinctly Anglo, as if produced by an assembly line. This setting symbolizes the standardization of identity under colonial and capitalist ideals. The protagonist's search for a suit becomes a metaphor for the larger crisis of identity among Bengali. Why must a Bengali man reject the traditional dhuti Punjabi in favor of a Western suit to be deemed successful? The modern Bengali's desire is dictated by the colonial residues and capitalist demands, where looking like a mannequin of Western ideals becomes aspirational. In this country, I, the computer, multiply unemployment, a stark critique of capitalism's effect on labor. Sen presents the rise of mechanization as an intensifier of joblessness, not a solution. He sees Bengal's slow acceptance of capitalism as a double-edged sword, offering the illusion of progress while exacerbating economic disparities and fostering commodity fetishism. Sen's aesthetic and activist filmmaking owes much to his early influences. Initially a physics student, Sen's foray into cinema began after reading Film as Art by Rudolf Arnhem. His engagement with Friends of the Soviet Union exposed him to early Soviet films, particularly Eisenstein's montage techniques. Like Ghatak, Sen adopted Soviet montage, but with a more radical activist approach. His embrace of imperfect cinema is evident in Interview, where he refuses polish in favor of raw, participatory storytelling. The protagonist destroys the suit mannequin, marking the film's crescendo. The fetishization of Western appearance and struggle for a better life coalesce into a moment of anger. The protagonist breaks the fourth wall for the second time, directly calling for a revolution against the capitalistic trap that forces individuals into an endless cycle of proving their worth. Sen, like Episona, saw cinema as a medium of action, compelling the audience to not just observe but participate in the struggle. His work aligns with third cinema, which sought to reject commercial and imperious narratives in favor of politically charged storytelling. Sen's filmmaking journey was fraught with financial challenges. His early works, including Raat Bhore, struggled to find an audience and funding remained a constant hurdle. The Film Finance Corporation primarily supported established wealthy directors who could provide financial guarantees, an impossible task for an independent filmmaker. However, his Hindi movie Bhuvan Shome became a turning point, prompting the FFC to shift its funding positions to support other offbeat filmmakers with limited financial backing. Since impact extended beyond cinema, he changed how films were funded in India. Mrinal Sen's interview remains a seminal work of activist cinema. It exposes the fractures of Bengal's socio-economic landscape, condemning the commodification of labor and the lingering colonial mindset. Through its protagonist struggle, fourth walk breaks, and raw aesthetic, the film not only critiques systematic oppression but also demands active resistance from its audience. Sen cinema is not meant to be passively consumed, it is a call to action. Satyajit Ray's Nayak is a profound meditation on modernity, traditionalism, and the existential crisis of Bengali identity. One of Ray's few original screenplays, Nayak transcends the surface level narrative of a Madinese idol, self doubt, and instead becomes a layered exploration of society at an ideological crossroads. The film captures the Bengali youth's internal struggle, torn between embracing capitalism and preserving traditional socialist values, through the protagonist Arindam Mukherjee's introspective journey.
আমার নাটককে সাবোটাজ করবার তাল করছো মতলব কি তোমার আপনি মিথ্যে রাগ করছেন শঙ্করদা মিথ্যে কেন সেটা আমি বিচার করব তারকা হবার বাসনা হয়েছে নাকি লেজ বিশিষ্ট ধূমকেতু আপনি তো সবই শুনেছেন তোমার মুখটা কথা শুনিনি আই ওয়ান্ট ইট ফ্রম ইউ না ওই জ্যোতি একটা ফিল্মের অফার নিয়ে এসেছিল.
The rejection of cultural, traditional performance art in favor of commercial cinema underscores the broader societal shift from community-driven cultural expression to mass-market entertainment. Arindam's rise to stardom represents the triumph of modernity, but at the cost of something essential: his personal integrity and ideological commitment. This generational divide is stark. The older guard resists the change, while the younger generation views it as inevitable.
শঙ্করদা বাঁচান আমাকে বাঁচান শঙ্করদা
A pivotal moment in Nayak is Arindam's dream sequence where he sees himself drowning in money while his old mentor Shankarda fades away. This haunting imagery reflects the costs of success, the price of assimilation into a capitalist framework. Was it truly Arindam's fault that Shankarda perished, or was it an unavoidable casualty of progress? He forces the viewer to confront this uncomfortable dilemma, leaving the question unanswered.
ভদ্রলোক তোমাকে ভালো লেগেছে সেটা কি খারাপ হলো মানে বাজি অলমোস্ট মাত এবার শুধু তোমার একটু সাহায্য চাই সাহায্য শুনে না ভদ্রলোক যে আমার ঠিকানা দিলেন আমার বাড়িতে চা খেতে বললেন তাতে কি বুঝতে পারছো না না বুঝে হবে বলে তুমি তো অ্যাক্টিং করেইছো স্টেজে এবার একটু বাস্তব জীবনে করবে ব্যাস অ্যাক্টিং all you have to be is a nice dream একটু কাছে গিয়ে বসা এসে দুটো মিষ্টি কথা বলা বুঝতেই পারছো তোমার স্বামীর জন্য তুমি এতটুকু করতে পারবে না
Ray critiques the erosion of moral values under capitalism through the subplot of advertiser who implicitly offers his wife to secure business deal. The degradation of sacred personal relationships in pursuit of wealth reflects a recurring theme in Ray's work, the rejection of excess. Traditional values erode as capitalism infiltrates every aspect of life, reducing even human connections to mere transactions.
শুটিং কথাটা যেন চেনা চেনা।
The character of Mukundan, an aging actor who is losing relevance, serves as an embodiment of traditionalism in decay. While slow erasure from industry parallels a larger cultural shift where older ideologies are rendered obsolete by relentless march of modernity, the erosion of starhood becomes a metaphor for the erosion of a socialist-leaning Bengal, unable to keep pace with changing times. This echoes interviews' deception of commodity fascism, where individuals, like objects, must constantly reinvent themselves to remain valuable. Ray's aesthetic choices in Nayak reinforce his themes. Unlike Sen and Ghatak, who employed overtly radical filmmaking techniques, Ray adopts a much more conservative approach. His framing, lighting, and construct a psychological space that mirrors Arindam's internal conflicts. The train, a symbol of transition, becomes an extended metaphor for the journey between traditionalism and modernity, personal guilt and public image, self-awareness and self-deception. Ultimately, Nayak does not provide a resolution. Arindam remains trapped in his existential turmoil just as Bengal's remains caught in its own. Ray's brilliance lies in the ability to universalize the struggle, making Arindam not just a superstar but an everyman navigating the complexities of change. Through Nayak, Ray doesn't tell a story. He possesses a question. What does it truly mean to be Bengali in a rapidly changing world? Sen, Ghatak and Ray all propagated themes of decolonization and expressed the desire for social liberalization. They actively worked on finding back the nation, the cultural heritage of Bengal, against the remnants of British colonialism. And they particularly became relevant against the backdrop of Bangladesh's Mukti Juddho. They became the face of parallel cinema in India, marked by the intersection of second cinema, which includes Fellini's influence on Ghatak's and Ray's layered characters, and third world cinema, which includes Sen's activist filmmaking and direct interactions with the audience. The parallel cinema of India combines auteur filmmaking with activist cinemas. Cinemas were nationalist through an alternative ideology. Cinemas were transnational through the collective struggle of Bengal in Bangladesh and India. Cinemas were activists through the active portrayal of the margins. Interestingly, the colonial era pressure on filmmaking to be both modern and traditional, embodying global and indigenous traits, transformed over a time into a common narrative structures within parallel cinema, where the duality is internalized within conflicted protagonists. During the same period, Bollywood significantly differed from the ongoing wave of socialist rejections prevalent within the rest of the nation's cinema. In 60s and 70s, popular Hindi cinema witnessed the emergence of an action-oriented movie, with a distinctive protagonist that shapes the character of an angry young man. Characters were now belligerent male protagonists post-independence Indian cinema. These characters reconciled the spiritual calm and otherworldly with its opposite, aggression, anger, and this worldly attitudes. In fact, the parallel cinema movement of India came as an opposition, a general reaction of the unrelated song and dance routines with that are typical of Bollywood. Later on, Bollywood abandoned socialist models to embrace the post-liberalization economy model, wealthy families symbolizing the economic accent of India, belonging with the upper class, beginning with film like Hum Aapke Hai Kaun. This is exactly where authors like Ray and Ghatak feared, where Indian cinema gets increasingly dominated by box office oriented filmmaking, and consequently the independent and non-studio backed filmmaking takes a hit. This gets marginalized and restricted amongst art house theaters only. The story of margins is now untold.